What if the most unforgettable love story in Asian drama never truly ended, but simply waited for the right moment to remind the world it still existed? Tonight, under the unfiltered glow of a live broadcast, Wang and Shen Yue did something no script could plan and no director could fully control. They brought back the feeling, the Meteor Garden feeling, and in doing so, they reopened a chapter millions believed was closed forever. From the very first seconds of the live video, something felt different. This was not just two former co-stars appearing together for courtesy or promotion. There was an ease in their silence, a familiarity in their timing, a comfort that only comes from shared history. Before a single word was spoken, the atmosphere had already shifted. Fans sensed it instantly. The air itself seemed to recognize them. This story isn't over. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We follow the moments and emotions of your favorite K-drama stars. Stay with us. Meteor Garden was never just a drama. It was a moment in time, a cultural wave, a story that defined an era and carved itself into the hearts of viewers across continents. Wang as Dao Mingxi and Shen Yue as Shan Kai were not merely characters. They became symbols of first love, youthful rebellion, emotional chaos, and the fragile hope that love could survive pride and pain. When the series ended, fans moved on, but the feeling never truly left. Years passed. Careers grew. Paths diverged. Public appearances became rare, and when they did happen, they were careful, controlled, professional. Or so it seemed. Then came this live moment. No dramatic announcement preceded it. No teasing headlines prepared the audience for what would unfold. Yet as the camera rolled, it became clear that something deeply familiar had resurfaced. The way Wang leaned in slightly when Shen Yue spoke. The way Shen Yue smiled before responding, as if already knowing what he would say. The gentle interruptions. The shared laughter that needed no explanation. These were not rehearsed gestures. They were instincts. At one point, there was a pause. A brief, unguarded silence. And in that silence, memories rushed back. Fans were no longer watching a live stream. They were reliving late nights spent glued to screens, arguing about episodes, crying over misunderstandings, believing in love that felt impossibly intense and painfully real. Social media reacted instantly. Comments flooded in at an overwhelming pace. Meteor Garden fans from different generations spoke the same emotional language. Some said it felt like time had folded in on itself. Others admitted they were shaking, not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing needed to happen at all. That was the power of it. There were no confessions, no declarations, no attempts to confirm or deny anything. And that restraint made the moment even more powerful. It allowed viewers to project their own memories, their own emotions, onto what they were witnessing. The chemistry did not demand attention. It quietly commanded it. This live appearance reminded the world why Meteor Garden worked so deeply. It was never about perfection. It was about tension, vulnerability, misunderstanding, and growth. Those elements were present again, not as characters, but as two people who once shared something intense and formative. Wang, now more confident and composed, carried the calm of someone who has weathered fame and pressure. Shen Yue, graceful yet grounded, radiated warmth and emotional intelligence. Together, they felt balanced in a way that only comes from mutual respect and shared memory. The most striking part was how little they needed to say. A glance replaced a sentence. A smile replaced an explanation. It was as if the story continued quietly between them, invisible to the camera, yet unmistakable to those watching closely. This was not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It was a reminder that some on-screen partnerships leave a permanent imprint. They shape careers, redefine genres, and create emotional bonds that time cannot erase.
Meteor Garden did that.
And tonight, Wang and Shen Yue proved that its spirit still lives. Perhaps the biggest revelation of this live moment is not about romance or speculation. It is about legacy, about how certain stories refuse to fade, and how certain connections remain powerful simply because they were real when they mattered most. As the live broadcast came to an end, one truth lingered in the hearts of viewers. Meteor Garden was never just a drama that happened years ago. It is a feeling that returns whenever Wang and Shen Yue share the same space, the same frame, the same quiet understanding. And maybe that is why this moment felt so overwhelming. Because it reminded us that some stories do not need endings. They only need moments like this to remind us they are still alive. And yet, when the screen went dark and the live broadcast ended, the feeling did not disappear. If anything, it grew stronger. Because what lingered was not a single moment, but the realization that something unfinished had resurfaced in the collective memory of millions. Viewers replayed the live in their minds, dissecting every pause, every smile, every subtle shift in tone. Not to prove anything, but to understand why it felt so deeply familiar. Why it felt personal. This is the quiet power of shared history. Wang and Shen Yue did not need to remind anyone who they were. Meteor Garden already did that years ago. It introduced them to the world not as celebrities, but as emotional anchors in a story that mirrored the chaos of growing up, loving imperfectly, and learning too late what truly matters. That connection was forged at a time when both actors were just beginning, when everything was raw and unpolished, when success had not yet taught restraint. That is why this live moment resonated so strongly. It carried the echo of who they once were, layered with who they have become. There is a particular kind of chemistry that does not fade with time. It matures. It softens at the edges, becomes quieter, more controlled, but also more profound. What fans witnessed was not the explosive tension of young characters falling in love, but the calm gravity of two people who understand each other without needing to prove anything. Throughout the live, there were moments when the conversation drifted naturally, without urgency. Those moments spoke the loudest. The ease with which they shared space suggested trust. The absence of awkwardness suggested familiarity. And familiarity, when sustained over years apart, tells a story of its own. For many fans, this was more than entertainment. It was a return to a version of themselves. The nights spent watching Meteor Garden, the emotions that felt overwhelming at the time, the belief that love could be dramatic, messy, and still worth fighting for. Seeing Wang and Shen Yue together again reopened those memories, not as fiction, but as emotional truth. It also raised an unspoken question. What happens when two people who once defined a generation share the same moment again, not as characters, but as themselves? The answer is subtle, but powerful. The world pauses. Expectations fall away. And what remains is authenticity. There was no attempt to recreate scenes. No forced references. No exaggerated reactions. Instead, the chemistry revealed itself in restraint, in mutual attentiveness, in the quiet acknowledgement of shared past without needing to relive it explicitly. This is why the moment felt cinematic, even without a script. In cinema, the most unforgettable scenes are often the quiet ones. A look held a second too long. A breath taken before speaking. A silence heavy with meaning. This live broadcast carried that same weight, unfolding in real time, unedited, vulnerable to interpretation. And perhaps that is what made it so powerful. It was real. As discussions spread online, one theme became clear. Fans were not demanding answers. They were not insisting on narratives. They were simply grateful to feel something again. To be reminded that certain connections transcend roles, timelines, and expectations. Meteor Garden was always about transformation, about how love challenges pride, reshapes identity, and leaves marks that never fully heal. Seeing Wang and Shen Yue together again felt like witnessing the aftermath of that transformation. Not dramatic, not chaotic, but deeply human. This live moment did not rewrite history. It honored it. And in doing so, it offered something rare in an industry driven by constant reinvention. Continuity. Emotional continuity. The understanding that some stories evolve instead of ending. When the cameras stopped rolling, the silence returned. But it was not empty. It was full of reflection, full of gratitude, full of a quiet hope that moments like this can exist without explanation. Because sometimes the greatest chemistry is not about what is said or confirmed. It is about what is felt, remembered, and carried forward. And tonight, Wang and Shen Yue reminded the world that the heart of Meteor Garden is still beating, softly, steadily, waiting for moments like this to remind us why it mattered in the first place.